Hi, welcome to Empty Nest Creations. I'm Wendy. Today I'm bringing you a few more thrift flips using IOD's new holiday release. So let's jump into project 1. I found this cute spice rack with a glass door for just $5.99 at the thrift store. This painted design on the front is making it look a little outdated. So I'm using a razor to remove the paint. This was time consuming and a bit messy, but it all came off pretty easy. So I'm just scraping, and I'll use my little vacuum periodically to vacuum up the dust. If you like thrift flips and DIY home decor, I would really like it if you would consider subscribing to my channel so you can follow along with all of the fun and the thrift flips. So once I got the glass all cleaned, I covered it with painter's tape to protect it from the paint that I'm going to be using. I'm using Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Haberdash. To use milk paint, you mix equal parts of powder and water. They suggest that you add the water first. So I added 2 tablespoons of water, and I'm adding 2 tablespoons of the milk paint. Once you've got them mixed together, you're just going to stir it for several minutes. I started out using this knife to just get all the powder mixed in, and then I'm going to switch to a whisk. That just helps me to mix it a little bit better. Once you've mixed it, you let it sit for about 10 minutes to thicken up, and then you can start painting. When you use milk paint and you're putting on that first coat, it may look like you're not going to get good coverage. But once you add that second coat, you get great coverage. On this piece, I was looking for some age. I wanted some cracking and some chipping. So I used a heat tool in between coats to encourage that cracking and chipping. I also sprayed this piece with 2 coats of shellac before I began painting, and that helps the paint to crack on this piece. So I'll cover this piece with 2 coats on the inside and the outside. You'll see here that this second coat covers much better. Now moving on to the outside, just making sure I get all of the areas covered. The tape does help to keep the paint off the glass, but I will need to use a razor tool to clean that glass after I remove the tape. Here you see me using that heat tool to encourage that cracking. This is a really pretty gray color, and I got this paint through Sonnet's Gardens Blooms subscription box, the maker's box. This was in the September or August. It's in the August maker's box. So I used a 220 grit sandpaper over the entire piece just to make sure that any of the loose paint comes off. And then you want to seal your milk paint. So I sealed this with some clear wax. And now I'm going to remove all that tape. And I'll use a razor to clean any paint off the glass. This does take a few minutes, but it would have taken a lot longer if I didn't use the tape. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. This really helps my channel to grow. It helps YouTube to know to share this out to other people. So once I've finished getting all the paint off, I'm going to clean the glass with some Windex, and this is just to prep it for the next step. So I'm going to use the IOD Clementine transfer for this project. This transfer book is full of beautiful floral and fruit prints, and these are perfect for year-round. This was part of the holiday release, but I feel like these transfers can be used anytime throughout the year. I'm going to use this orange Clementine transfer. I wanted to find a transfer that would fit nicely on the glass. So once I picked out the transfer that I wanted to use, I'll use scissors to cut the transfer down to make it fit better onto this piece of glass. That's what's great about IOD's transfers, is you can use them as they are, as a whole sheet, or you can cut them apart and use pieces or rearrange them to fit whatever design you want. So here I've laid this down. I'm just using the transfer tool that comes with all of your transfers to rub this transfer down. So you rub and you lift that cover sheet as you rub, and it will release that image onto your project piece. As you're lifting, if you see any of the transfer that did not adhere to your piece, just lay that transfer plastic back down and rub some more, and it will release onto your piece. Once the image is completely transferred, I'm going to use that cover sheet to burnish the image down, just rubbing over it with that piece of plastic to ensure that it adheres well. You can do that with your fingers, or you can use, like I said, the plastic sheet that comes with it. Now I'm taking the other piece of this transfer, just trimming it up to make it fit in this top corner. And then I'm going to use that tool to rub this one down, lifting that plastic as I go. These transfers adhere really well to glass. You just want to make sure that when you lay it down that you have it exactly where you want it, because sometimes just laying it down and touching the glass part of it can go ahead and adhere to your piece. You want to, be careful when you lay it down to make sure you have it exactly where you want it. Now, when I cut this apart, I accidentally cut a piece of that leaf off, but I was able to just lay that back down and rub it on. And now this project is complete. I love how it turned out. I think this will make a great addition to anyone's kitchen. I added some spice jars in here just to get a sense of what it will look like, filled with spices. I'm ready for baking those holiday treats. These transfers are so detailed and so beautiful. The colors are so vibrant. So let's move on to project 2. I just love the new Saint Nick mold by IOD. It's large and so detailed. So for this project, I'm starting out using the Amazing Casting Resin in the white color. I'm going to cast the Saint Nick and the holly that's on this mold. To use this resin, you mix equal parts of A and B, and you pour it into your mold. This is a quick setting resin. It sets within about 10 minutes. So here you can see it starting to cure. It turns white as it cures, and it does heat up. So you'll see I pulled this out of the mold and it's a little hot still, so I dropped it because it was quite warm. So you want to be careful when you're removing it from the mold. But it pops out pretty easily, and once it is cured, it is ready for paint. So I use a variety of paints to paint St. Nick. Again, this mold is so very detailed, and the paint really helps to bring out all those details. I start out by painting his face, and then giving him some beautiful blue eyes. So I'm using some red and some black for his hat. I start out by just giving it a base coat of red. I'm just using a small artist brush here. And then I'm going to come back in with some of the red and black. And I'm just going to mix those two together. And I do a lot of the mixing right on the piece. So I put a little bit of red, put a little bit of black together on the piece. And then I just mix those two in. I wanted to give some shading to these details in the hat. The shading really helps to bring out the dimension and give it a depth of color to this piece. I'm sorry about my camera. I have ordered a new one that should be able to focus a little bit better. So hopefully my next videos will have better focus on some of these details. And once I get that hat painted, then I'm going to move on to his beard. And I know most of the time Santa's beard is white, but I didn't want this whole piece to be mostly white. So I added a little black in with the white, and I'm giving his beard a coat of gray paint. And we'll eventually paint his eyebrows this gray color as well. But I'm going in and I'm just coating the entire beard with this gray paint. And then we'll come back later and add some more detail to his beard. Now there is a little section that is his mouth that I missed. And I painted it gray. So I'm just going back in. I added a little white. And then I'm going to go back in with some skin tone paint. And color that in, and then I'm going to add some pink for his lips. Like I said, these molds are so very detailed, and they don't leave anything out. So I painted his little mouth pink, and then I go in with some of that pink and just add a little bit to his cheeks to give him some rosy cheeks. And then I'm just going to use some white to go in, and I'm going to paint the fur trim on his hat and the little pom-pom on the end of his hat. Now the mold is already white, but the white paint just brings out some of that detail. And then I'm going to dry brush the white over his beard and his eyebrows, just to bring out some of that detail. I really, really like the way this St. Nick turns out. And you see the holly and berries there. I'm going to paint those. We're going to use those to add to his hat. I won't use both of them, but I'll use one of them to add to his hat later on. So I just use some green and red paint here, and these are fusion paints, but you can use any kind of paint on these that you want to. So I found this little box, wooden box at the thrift store for just a couple of dollars. Now it says Holy Bible on it. I'm not sure what that was for, but when I saw this, I thought it would make a great Santa's letter box. So I'm using a little bit of spackle to fill in those letters. It's not really going to matter that much because the St. Nick mold's going to go over that. But I just wanted to fill that in some. And I'm going to use the Fusion paint in the color Bayberry. I'm going to give the box 2 coats of this Fusion paint on the inside and the outside. I did paint around the little latch on the front and the hinges on the back. I'm going to give this 2 really good coats and let it dry in between the coats. Once that's all dry, we're going to come in with the Christmas Post stamp set. I think this is the perfect stamp set for a Santa's letter box. So I'm using the IOD black permanent ink, and I'm using an acrylic block to place these stamps on here. And you just want to be careful when you lay them down to get them in the right place, and press it down and lift straight up. I do use a heat tool to set the ink. I don't want it to smear, and I'm going to put several stamps all around this box. So I'm just using a bunch of the different stamps and placing them on the cover, but then I'll also do the sides and the back. The idea was that this looks like it's been, you know, postmarked and stamped at the post office. But I want to leave space for the St. Nick mold. So after I use each stamp, I'm using just a baby wipe to wipe the ink off. It's important that you clean your stamps. So I just use a wipe, and then I'll wash them later on. And I didn't get a good angle on these with the camera. I apologize for that. But I'm just going around and stamping in different locations on the box. I didn't use all the stamps in this set, but I used a good deal of them. Now this one is the Santa and his sleigh, and it was too big for my acrylic block, so I'm just using it, just putting the ink on and then laying it onto the piece. And then again, heat setting that to make sure we don't smear any of these images. I did put stamps on all of the sides, even in between the hinges. I'll put a stamp there as well. And I turned the stamps in all different angles. Just giving the box a little bit of interest. So once I finish that, I'm just kind of seeing where the Santa's going to go. I did want to add some embossing. Now I missed the first step here, but I'm using a pen to write Santa's letters, and then you put the embossing powder on, kind of like glitter. You tap it off, and then you use a heat tool. And the heat tool basically melts that embossing powder and makes a raised image. Now I did go over this twice because I wanted it to be a little more bulky and raised. This just adds a little bit of dimension to our box and a little more interest. So here I'm just using some of that quick setting glue with the accelerating spray to add that holly to Santa's hat. And I'm going to adhere this to the box with some wood glue. I put some wood glue in the center of the mold, and then I'm going to use the quick setting glue to go around the edges. I just wanted this to dry pretty quickly so I could move on to the next step. So I'm using that accelerating spray. That wood glue is going to hold it for long term. So now the outside is finished. Now for the inside, I decided I would use this piece of paper. Now I designed this on Canva. I just used some of the images that they have on Canva and created kind of a collage here. And I'm using a ruler to cut this down to make it fit inside the box. So I'm folding the edges down, cutting out those corners, to make it have a perfect fit inside this box. I used just some decoupage gel by Prima to adhere this to the inside of the box. This is just, I use a regular copier to print this and use regular copy paper. I just thought this really needed something on the inside to have a little decorative piece on the inside. So I use the decoupage gel to adhere it, and then I cover it with decoupage gel. It did bubble up some, but when it dried, it flattened back out and looks great. I really love this box. I think it turned out really great, and I think this is a great way to store your child's letters to Santa. So I thought this would be a really fun way to, keep those letters year to year in a keepsake box. You can use it as a decor piece. Your children can put their letters in there, and then Santa can write back to them and deliver it magically into the Santa's letter box. I thought this was just a really cool idea. So we're going to move on to project 3. And this is a simple one, but it's very nostalgic for me. I found this ash shovel while I was in Texas visiting my cousin. It immediately took me back to my grandparents' home. They had one of these that they used to remove the ashes from the fireplace, so I had to have it. I'm giving it a coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color ink, and then I'm just going to use some Fusion Tough Coat to seal in that chalk paint. I do the front and the back. And then once that's completely dry, we're going to use the IOD Christmas Joy Transfer just to add a little decoration to our shovel. So again, these transfers are so easy to use. It's as easy as, peeling that backing off, laying it down, and then rubbing it on. Now when you use a transfer on a curved surface like this shovel, you may get some cracks or some places where it tears, and that's okay. Especially for this piece, I wanted it to have that. It's an old shovel and it's going to have an aged look to it, so the cracks in the transfer were fine with me. Once it's finished, I did want to seal my transfer in, so I'm just using some Country Chic clear wax, and I give the entire piece a coat of this wax, the front and the back. And this will keep it from getting any rust or anything on the shovel. I'm just going to use this as a decor piece. I'm keeping this. It's special to me. So I'm keeping this. So here you see it displayed on a little table, but you could also use this to hang on a door. I might add a bow to it later on. I'm not sure. Maybe some greenery. But I really just thought this was special and sweet. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a comment below. Let me know which project was your favorite. And I want to thank you for sharing some of your time with me. I really do appreciate you all watching my video. I appreciate all of you who have subscribed to my channel. It's been amazing these last couple of weeks. I enjoy reading your comments and hearing from you all. Thank you so much for watching and giving me some of your time, and I'll see you in the next video.